The house was silent, a silence that had become James's nightly companion since Susan left. It was a large colonial with creaky wooden floors and walls adorned with the vibrant paintings Liam had created over the years. Each room echoed with the absence of laughter, the lack of her perfume, the void where her presence once filled every corner with life. James sat in the living room, the only light coming from a single lamp beside his favorite armchair. The walls around him were a gallery of memories, each piece of art telling a story of a family that once was whole. He poured himself another glass of wine, the red liquid swirling in the glass like his thoughts. He was a man of routine, but since Susan's departure, his days had lost their structure. Work at the law firm was the same, but home was different, a puzzle with a missing piece. He looked around at the scattered brushes, the palette left out with dried colors, the signs of Liam's passion that now also filled the spaces left by his mother. The sound of the front door unlocking snapped him out of his reverie. Liam stepped in, his silhouette framed by the streetlight outside. He was a vision of youth and art, with paint smudges on his face, a testament to another late night at his studio. His hair was a wild mess, his smile broad despite the late hour. "Hey, Dad, you're up late," Liam greeted, his voice a melody in the quiet house. He dropped his bag by the door and approached, the scent of oil paints mingling with his cologne. "Couldn't sleep," James admitted, gesturing to the wine bottle. "Want some?" Liam nodded, grabbing a glass and sitting on the couch opposite his father. He poured himself a drink, the sound of liquid against glass momentarily filling the silence. They clinked glasses, a ritual of theirs, a silent toast to whatever was left unspoken. "How was the studio tonight?" James asked, genuinely interested. Liam's art was like watching him grow up all over again, each piece a new chapter of his life. "Intense. I've been working on this new piece." It's different," Liam responded, his eyes lighting up with the fervor of creation. "It's about connection, about feeling lost and then found." James listened, his heart swelling with pride but also with a pang of loneliness. They talked about the colors Liam chose, the emotions he tried to capture, the stories behind each stroke. The conversation flowed, weaving through art to memories of Susan, to plans for the future, a future James now had to reimagine without her. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, their words began to taper off. The house seemed to shrink around them, the room feeling more like a cocoon than an empty space. Liam stood up, stretching, his shirt riding up to reveal a sliver of skin, a detail that caught James's eye for a moment longer than necessary. "I should let you get some sleep," Liam said, moving towards James to give him a hug goodnight. The embrace was warm, grounding, but there was a moment when Liam's hand lingered on James's back, a touch that felt like it held more than just comfort. "Good night, Liam," James whispered, his voice catching slightly. His son's touch lingered, a silent promise of companionship, of not being alone even if the house felt empty. As Liam retreated to his room, James sat back down, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. The wine glass in his hand was now empty, mirroring how he felt inside. But there was also a warmth spreading from where Liam had touched him, a warmth that stirred feelings James wasn't ready to confront. He looked at the paintings once more, each one a testament to Liam's soul, to their shared life. Tonight, the house wasn't just echoing with absence, it was also whispering the possibilities of new beginnings, of a different kind of love, one painted with the colors of their new reality. Night after night, James found himself waiting for Liam to come home, their talks becoming the highlight of his day. It was as if his soul had been waiting for these moments, these brief interludes where life felt normal, where the pain of his solitude was momentarily painted over with the joy of Liam's presence. The evenings turned ritualistic. James would open a bottle of wine, set out 2 glasses, and wait. The sound of Liam's key in the lock was like the first note of a symphony, signaling the start of something beautiful. When Liam entered, he brought with him the outside world, the energy of creation, the scent of his life outside these walls. One particular evening, after too much wine had been shared and laughter had echoed through the once quiet house, Liam proposed they watch a film together in James's bed, just like old times. "For nostalgia's sake," he said with a grin, his eyes sparkling with the mischievous light of youth. James hesitated for a second, the memory of Susan's warmth beside him in that very bed flashing through his mind. But he nodded, the idea of recreating past comforts too alluring to resist. They moved upstairs, the house creaking in agreement as if it too welcomed this change. The room was dark, save for the glow of the laptop screen where an old black and white film played. James lay on one side of the bed, Liam on the other, their bodies separated by the expanse of the mattress but connected by the shared blanket. The air was thick with the scent of Liam's cologne, a musky, comforting aroma, mixed with the subtle tang of paint that clung to him like a second skin. As the film progressed, the characters on screen danced through life's trials, their love story unfolding in shades of gray. James felt a shift, a subtle but undeniable pull towards his son. Liam's hand brushed against his, a seemingly accidental touch that lingered, each finger finding its counterpart. The contact was electric, a spark in the darkness. James didn't move his hand away, instead, he let their fingers intertwine, the warmth of Liam's palm against his own. It was a moment of silent agreement, a touch that spoke of comfort but hinted at something deeper, something they both were too scared or too unsure to voice. The movie's dialogue faded into the background as James became acutely aware of Liam beside him, the rise and fall of his chest, the soft sound of his breathing, the closeness of their bodies. He could feel the heat radiating from Liam, a warmth that seemed to seep into his bones, easing the chill of loneliness that had settled there. They didn't talk about the hand-holding, the film's end coming too soon, leaving them in silence. Liam's thumb traced small circles on James's hand, a gentle, soothing motion that made James's heart race in a way he hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," Liam whispered as the credits rolled, his voice low, almost lost to the night. "For this. For tonight." James turned his head, catching Liam's gaze in the dim light from the screen. There was something in those eyes, a depth, an unspoken question or maybe an answer to one James hadn't yet asked himself. "Thank you," James replied, his voice equally soft, the weight of the moment making the words feel heavy, significant. They lay there for a while longer, the film long forgotten, the night stretching out before them. When Liam finally got up to leave, there was a moment, a heartbeat where he leaned down, his lips brushing against James's forehead in a kiss that was more than just goodnight. It was a promise, a brush stroke on the canvas of their lives, hinting at a masterpiece yet to be painted. James watched Liam leave, the door closing softly, leaving him alone in the dark with the echo of that touch, the warmth of it still on his skin. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the room now filled with the loud, insistent beat of his own heart, questioning everything he thought he knew about comfort, about love, about the boundaries of his affection for his son. The boundaries began to blur, much like the colors on one of Liam's canvases where hues melded into one another, creating something new, something indefinable. Liam's visits to James's room became as routine as the setting sun, his presence a soothing balm to the loneliness that had taken residence in the house. Each night, after the world outside had quieted, Liam would knock softly on James's door, a gentle request for companionship. They would talk, sometimes about art, sometimes about nothing at all, their conversations painting over the silence with strokes of comfort. One particular night, after a day where the weight of Susan's absence had been particularly heavy, Liam entered with a quiet demeanor, his steps almost a whisper on the wooden floor. He slipped into bed beside James, the mattress dipping under his weight, bringing them closer. The room was a cocoon of darkness, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the curtains, casting everything in shades of silver and shadow. As they lay side by side, the closeness was palpable. Liam's breath was warm against James's neck, each exhale a soft caress. "You're not alone, Dad," Liam whispered, his voice a soothing tide in the quiet. The words felt like a promise, a lifeline thrown into the dark waters of James's solitude. James felt his heart stutter at the proximity, at the intimacy of the moment. Liam's body was a furnace of warmth against his, the contact sparking something within him that was both comforting and confusing. His son's presence felt like the missing piece of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete until now. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion. Every touch from Liam, every shared look, was laden with layers. James's body responded to this nearness with a mix of fatherly love and something far more complex, a feeling that seemed to break the boundaries of what he thought was possible, of what was acceptable. He questioned his attractions, his identity, the very foundation of who he believed himself to be. Was this just a phase of grief, a desperate reaching for connection in a world that felt too solitary? Or was it something deeper, more permanent, the true color of his heart finally showing through the cracks? Liam's hand found his under the covers, their fingers threading together in a familiar yet now charged manner. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and it sent James's thoughts spiraling. He could feel the rhythm of his heart speeding up, his breath catching in his throat. There was a part of him that wanted to pull away, to establish the boundaries that seemed to be dissolving, but another part, a growing part, relished in this new intimacy, this unexpected closeness that felt both wrong and right. As they lay there, the silence between them was no longer empty but filled with the unspoken, with questions and possibilities hanging in the air like the scent of Liam's paint. James turned his head slightly, his cheek brushing against Liam's hair, the contact sending a shiver down his spine. "I know," James finally whispered back, his voice thick with emotion, with confusion. "I know I'm not alone." The night stretched on, neither moving, just existing in this new reality they were creating. James felt the weight of his own identity shifting, the colors of his life blending into new patterns. He was scared, unsure, but there was also an undeniable pull, a desire to explore this new shade of love, to see where these blurred lines might lead them. In the quiet of his room, with Liam's breath against his skin, James acknowledged that his feelings were not just the echoes of a lonely heart but perhaps the beginning of a new, vibrant palette of emotions, one where the love for his son was both clear and confusing, a masterpiece of the heart still in its making. Liam's art had always been a window into his soul, but lately, it had become a mirror reflecting the turmoil within the walls of their home. His paintings, once filled with abstract colors and forms, now captured a storm of emotions, vibrant, chaotic, and deeply personal. The canvas was no longer just a medium for art, it was a diary of his heart. James, who had always admired Liam's work, found himself particularly drawn to one piece during a visit to Liam's studio. The painting was unlike anything Liam had done before. Two figures, their forms a blend of light and shadow, were intertwined, the colors around them not just mixing but dancing in a passionate embrace. There was an intimacy in the brush strokes, a longing in the hues that seemed to reach out from the canvas. "Is this us?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding as he tried to decipher the emotions laid bare before him. Liam nodded, his eyes meeting James's with a vulnerability that was palpable. "Yes, Dad. It's us. Or how I see us, at least." His confession was like a key turning in a lock, opening something that had been tightly shut. The painting wasn't just a piece of art, it was a confession, a declaration of feelings Liam had perhaps not fully understood until he put them onto canvas. The colors, the way the figures melded, spoke of a love that transcended the ordinary, challenging the very concept of what love should be. That night, after the gallery of Liam's soul had left James with more questions than answers, they found themselves back in the familiar darkness of James's bedroom. The air was charged with a different kind of electricity, the unspoken now hanging between them like a physical entity. The barrier of denial, once a fortress, crumbled like sandcastles before the tide. Liam's touch was no longer just comforting, it was exploratory, each movement deliberate, sensual. He traced the lines of James's face with a fingertip, as if learning him anew, his touch igniting a fire under James's skin. James felt the weight of Liam's body against his, a weight that spoke of many things, comfort, love, but now, also desire. The quiet in Liam's eyes was not the silence of absence but the hush of anticipation, a plea that James could no longer ignore. They shared a kiss, the first of its kind between them. It was hesitant at first, a tentative exploration of boundaries they had never dared to cross. But the hunger was there, an unspoken need that had been growing in the shadows of their grief and loneliness. The kiss deepened, becoming something more desperate, as if they were both starved for something neither had known they needed. James's hands found Liam's waist, pulling him closer, the reality of what they were doing breaking through the layers of denial he'd wrapped around himself. Each kiss was a brush stroke on a new canvas, painting a picture of desire, of love that was both beautiful and terrifying in its implications. The night unfurled like a scroll, each moment a revelation. They explored each other with a mixture of reverence and urgency, the silence of the house now filled with the sounds of their breathing, of whispered names, of touches that spoke volumes. It was an awakening for James, a realization that his feelings for Liam were not just those of a father but something far more intricate, a tapestry of love woven with threads of passion. The confusion from before was still there, but it was now interlaced with a burgeoning acceptance, a willingness to see where this new color on their shared canvas might lead them. As dawn approached, they lay entwined, the world outside still sleeping, unaware of the new art being created within these walls. The painting in Liam's studio had been a prophecy, a visual of what was to come. Now, they had painted their first strokes of desire, together, on the canvas of their lives. The morning sun was an intruder, spilling light into the room that had been their sanctuary of confusion and discovery. The air was thick with the unspoken as James and Liam navigated the aftermath of their night, their movements around each other cautious, like dancers learning a new step. Breakfast was a silent affair, the clinking of cutlery against plates a stark contrast to the symphony of emotions that had played out under the cover of night. Stolen glances were exchanged, each one a silent acknowledgement of something significant that had shifted between them. James felt the weight of guilt, the fear of what this meant for them, for their family, but beneath it all, there was that undeniable pull towards Liam, a magnetic force that seemed to defy logic and convention. They needed to talk. The silence was a temporary balm, but it wouldn't heal the wounds of uncertainty or the new questions about their relationship. After breakfast, James cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife through butter. "Liam, we need to talk," he said, his voice a mix of fear and desire, the words hanging in the air like a question mark. Liam nodded, his expression one of relief mixed with apprehension. They moved to the living room, where the paintings on the walls seemed to watch over them, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Sitting across from each other, the space between them felt both too vast and too small. Liam started, his voice quiet but steady. "I've felt this way for a while, Dad. I know it's confusing, and maybe wrong in the eyes of the world, but I've always felt closer to you than to anyone else. I love you, not just as my father but differently." James listened, each word from Liam like a brush stroke on his heart, painting it with colors he was only now beginning to understand. The confession was raw, unfiltered, and it resonated with the turmoil inside him. I feel something too, Liam," James admitted, his voice cracking under the weight of his own confession. "But it's complicated. It scares me. I'm afraid of what this means, of losing you, of losing myself in this." Liam reached out, his hand finding James's, the touch grounding them both. "I'm scared too, but I think we've both been denying what's real. We need to figure this out together, not apart. I don't want to hide how I feel anymore." The room was filled with the heavy breath of confessions, the air thick with the potential of change. James looked into Liam's eyes, seeing not just his son but a part of himself he had never known existed. "We need to figure this out," he murmured again, the words now carrying a tone of acceptance, of a desire to explore this new terrain of their relationship. They talked for hours, discussing boundaries, the future, the possible repercussions of their feelings. They spoke of love, of how it could be both nurturing and destructive, of how they might navigate the world's judgment. The conversation was a dance of words, of setting limits and perhaps, in some ways, erasing them completely. James felt a strange liberation in the talk, in the honesty. The acceptance was not immediate or without its own set of shadows, but there was a beginning, a willingness to see where this path might lead. They agreed to take things slowly, to allow themselves to feel without the rush of fear clouding every moment. As evening approached, the tension had eased, replaced by a tentative peace. They shared a look, one that spoke of understanding, of a love that was shifting, evolving into something that was theirs to define. "We'll figure this out," Liam said, his voice firm, his eyes bright with the conviction of youth, with the promise of something new. "Yes, we will," James echoed, feeling the weight of his fear lighten, replaced by the shade of acceptance, a color he was learning to embrace in the palette of his life. They stood, moving closer, not just physically but emotionally, ready to paint their future, stroke by careful stroke, with the colors of their love. With the decision to explore their new reality, James and Liam tread carefully, like painters choosing the right brush for a delicate part of their canvas. They disguised their dates as father-son outings, careful to maintain the facade of normalcy while allowing the intimacy between them to grow, like ivy in the hidden corners of a garden. They visited galleries, where Liam's art was sometimes displayed among others, giving them a chance to share critiques and dreams under the guise of cultural outings. Music became another shared language, with evenings spent listening to records, their bodies swaying to the rhythm in the privacy of their home, each movement a silent confession. Quiet moments became their treasure, times when the world seemed to recede, leaving just the two of them. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations dipping into the depths of their souls, revealing layers of themselves they had never shown to anyone else. Each touch was deliberate, lingering a moment longer than necessary, each look filled with layers of unspoken meaning, like the nuanced shadows in a painting. One evening, under the pretense of watching the stars, they ventured into the backyard. The sky was a canvas of its own, sprinkled with the light of distant suns. They lay in the hammock, its gentle swing like the brush of a soft paint on their lives. The night was cool, their breaths visible in the crisp air, their bodies close for warmth, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Here, away from the prying eyes of the world, from the judgment of society, they allowed themselves to feel, to be. The hammock was their sanctuary, a place where they could be more than just father and son. Liam's head rested against James's chest, his heart beat a steady rhythm beneath his ear, a melody that spoke of love, of longing. "Look," Liam whispered, pointing at the sky, his finger tracing the outline of constellations. But James's gaze was on Liam, on the way the moonlight played across his features, turning him into something ethereal, something beautiful in a way that made his heart ache with its intensity. They talked about the stars, about life, about the possibility of a future where they could openly share this connection. But for now, this was enough, the warmth of each other in the cool night, the feeling of belonging, of being understood in a way that transcended conventional labels. James wrapped his arms tighter around Liam, the gesture both protective and possessive, a silent declaration. Liam responded by nuzzling closer, his breath hitching slightly in the cold, his body fitting perfectly against James's like two pieces of a puzzle meant to be together. Their kisses were slow, exploratory, filled with the wonder of discovery. Each one was like adding a new color to their palette, a hue of passion and tenderness that hadn't been there before. The intimacy was not just physical, it was an emotional intertwining, a dance of souls that had found in each other a reflection of their deepest selves. As the night deepened, they spoke less, letting the silence wrap around them, a blanket of mutual understanding. The stars above were witnesses to their burgeoning love, to the quiet revolution of their hearts. They didn't need words to convey what was blooming between them. Their closeness, the way they held each other, spoke volumes. When the chill of the night finally forced them inside, they did so with reluctance, as if leaving this moment behind meant stepping back into a world not yet ready for the art they were creating. But within the walls of their home, they continued to paint their life with the colors of their love, with each touch, each look, each shared breath adding to the masterpiece of their relationship, a work in progress, filled with endless possibilities. The acceptance came slowly, like the dawn after a long night, where the first light of understanding began to dispel the shadows of doubt. James recognized that his love for Liam transcended the traditional labels society had set, a love that was both beautiful and terrifying in its defiance of norms. This realization was like the final stroke on a canvas, defining the artwork of their lives. They decided to live this truth, to paint their lives with whatever colors felt right for them, even if it meant facing societal backlash. The world might not understand, might not accept, but they had found a love that was worth the challenge, a love that was their own to define and defend. Their relationship became their art, a masterpiece not just of love but of loss and rebirth, of the courage to live authentically. They moved to a new city, seeking a fresh start where the whispers of their past could be lost in the noise of new beginnings. Here, Liam could exhibit his work, his paintings reflecting the journey of their hearts, each piece a testament to their story. James found a new job, one that allowed him to reinvent himself, not just as a father or a lover but as someone who had embraced the complexity of his own identity. By Liam's side, he learned to be both protector and partner, to navigate the world with a love that was both their strength and their vulnerability. Together, they created a home filled with art, music, and the vibrant hues of their shared life. They hosted gatherings, introducing their friends to the beauty of love that didn't fit into neat boxes, where every guest left with a sense of having witnessed something profound, something rare. The backlash came, as expected, in forms of whispers, sideways glances, and the occasional outright condemnation. But in the face of judgment, they stood united, their love a testament to the resilience of the human heart. They learned that acceptance from others was not necessary when they had each other's love as their foundation. Liam's art continued to evolve, each exhibition a chapter of their life, capturing the essence of their bond. His latest series, titled Shades of Us, was a hit, not just for its technical beauty but for the emotion it conveyed, the story of love in its purest, most unconventional form. In this new city, they were not just surviving, they were thriving, finding joy in the everyday moments, in the quiet nights where they could be just themselves, in the public spaces where they held hands, a small act of defiance and celebration. As they walked through the city one evening, hand in hand, the lights reflecting off the wet streets like stars on a canvas, James felt a profound sense of peace. "We've painted a good life, haven't we?" he mused aloud, looking at Liam with a love that was now as clear as day. "We've just begun," Liam replied, his smile lighting up his face, his eyes reflecting the city's lights and the promise of their future. Their story, a tapestry of love painted with bold strokes of passion, understanding, and mutual growth, was finding its place in the gallery of life. It was a narrative of two souls who, against all odds, chose to love in a way that was true to themselves, teaching those around them that love, in its many forms, was the greatest art of all. Their masterpiece was far from finished, each day adding new layers, new colors, to a love that would continue to evolve, as dynamic and enduring as any work of art.